So what is a buying agent and what is it that they can actually do for you? Well, in this video, we're going to share 10 top things that a buying agent is going to do to make your life easier. Hi everyone, I'm Arinzeh with Onyx Property Team and Keller Williams. Thanks so much for watching my YouTube channel. I'm a London property agent and I put out weekly videos about the London property market and sharing things about life, culture, schools, activities, communities that make living in London so incredible. As a property agent, I love working with buyers and sellers, but particularly buyers, to help them navigate the buying process here in the UK. For my international buyers, especially Americans, they're often very surprised about how different buying in the UK property market is compared to, say, in America. And so for me, it's something I felt really passionate about being a buying agent and offering my services, because typically the way the market here works is people don't often work with buying agents, but having bought property in America and knowing the value of a good buying agent and the service that they bring, I felt was really important to offer that for my clients. But don't forget, if you are new to my YouTube channel, please make sure to hit subscribe and the like button, and I'd love it if you leave me a comment as to what you liked about this video. So let's dive into the 10 things a good buying agent will do for you to make your life easier. First is to help you get prepared. And that means working with you to make sure you've gotten a mortgage in principle, we've discussed your budget, your financing options. Also, have you considered the mortgage advisor to work with, perhaps helping you identify a solicitor that you're going to want to work with. The reason is, again, the better we can prepare you on the front end, when we go to present you or present your offer, it's going to be that much stronger. When you're a first-time buyer in the UK market, it is going to be very different than, say, the way you've transacted in other countries. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we're preparing you as a buyer and that you're in a position to buy at an appropriate budget or price point. The second thing a good buying agent will do is to provide you current and up-to-date market dynamics. The London property market is constantly changing, especially in the current chapter we're in right now. And so there's so many articles you can read and everything, but the reality is, for your certain area, the dynamics may be very different. So I have a background as a real estate investment banker, so I'm really passionate about making sure we use data when appropriate, but that helps give the framework of what we're comparing to. So for example, if somebody's comparing one part of town to another, it helps to look at price per square foot, have a sense of what that same budget might be able to buy you in a different part of town. Speaking of what a budget gets you in different parts of town, if you want to know what £1 million gets you in London, make sure to check out my latest video on what £1 million gets you in London. It's a great way to get a sense of how far that budget will go throughout the city. Coming back to our list, the third thing a good agent will do is get a detailed brief from you. That means when I'm working with buyers, I spend a fair amount of time talking to them to not just understand the statistical criteria like 3-bedroom, 2-bath, square footage, garage, garden, those types of things. While they're very important, it's also very important to understand why you want those things, what's driving this purchase. Because if I can get a better sense of that and what that purchase might mean to you, it'll also help me inform the ways I can help. For example, a couple years ago, I was working with a gentleman who was looking for a pied-à-terre, a second home in London, and he was going to keep it as a second home, but he lives in Oxford, and so he was wanting leafy, tony neighborhood, easy, a more mature area, but he was considering the areas around Chiswick in West London. But as I got to ask him questions, the reality was he was going to be commuting in on a regular basis from Oxford, and that was going to bring him into Paddington and Marylebone stations, and therefore I was able to offer him a different part of town which would also still give that leafy neighborhood feel that he was looking for, but would be much more convenient logistically as he came into town. And so we kind of focused our search on Maida Vale, and we did end up buying him something in Maida Vale that I think he's been very happy with. So it's really important that we can spend time on that detailed brief, understanding your needs and really making sure when we're looking for properties, we're then matching it appropriately. Number 4 on our list and what a good buying agent will do for you is to actually offer you different areas to consider. So while you might have an idea of the areas you want to be in, we've got to always manage that based on your budget. So sometimes it might mean that as an agent, we have to offer you or propose different neighborhoods that might give you still what you're looking for, but be realistic to that budget. Just like in the example we talked about before, the neighborhood consideration could also be different based on logistically what you might need, whether it's commuting to school or work or what have you, or the airport. Then the areas to consider are definitely going to be very important. Number 5 on the list of what a good buying agent will do for you is to actually identify properties. So we take a lot of the stress away from having to search multiple portals, registering with different agents, and being inundated with properties that don't meet your criteria. We can be really focused, and I've built up great relationships with a lot of agents in different parts of town so that they know when I'm calling that I'm working with a serious buyer, and often can see things that might not even have hit the market yet or that might be coming available soon. So it's really important that we can help you identify properties. Doesn't mean that you can't find properties on your own, but it'll help us if we can find the right properties for you and also lay it out in a way that helps you compare. Again, with my analytical background, what I'm great at is presenting spreadsheets to help also kind of compare, price, location, distance to tube stations, square footage, price per square foot, does it have a garden, is it, what floor is that on? So you can have that good sense of information to make the right decision, and it really starts crystallizing which properties might be more suitable than others. After we've identified the properties, then the 6th thing a good buying agent will do for you is actually to go preview the properties for you. And sometimes I preview properties with my clients, but sometimes they're international and we'll go on their behalf. I'm currently working with a Cypriot client who's looking for a buy-to-let investment, and we were out last week checking out properties on his behalf. We send great detailed videos. We can communicate how and when they want to. When I'm working with couples, we create a WhatsApp group so we can upload those the videos, and definitely spend time having a follow-up call, walking them through some key features that we've seen. Obviously, when the client is able to be in town, we can then be really efficient, organize viewings on their behalf, and fit in a good number of viewings in a very efficient time frame. Again, taking away all the stress of working with agents, trying to coordinate multiple viewings, but be there with them. I have found that when I can be with my clients and get their visceral on-site, reactions, that really helps inform our search criteria going forward. A couple years ago, I was working with a mother and daughter who had all kinds of criteria, had a dog, had all these things. They wanted a space where they could work from home. But then as we went out and viewed property, it became really clear that the mother had a very sensitive nose, and there was no way she was walking in or dealing with any properties that really anyone had lived in. So we really needed a property that had been refurbished or never been lived in that was going to be suitable for them. And that's what we ended up finding them. But we didn't really know that going into it until we got her reaction time and time again when she could smell previous odors and, on the carpets and things like that, and was very highly sensitive to that. So it's really important that when we preview, we can get that real-time feedback. I often get clients saying they don't like a property, but it's really important if I can ask you, but what about it don't you like? That way we can get clear so that we can avoid that in the future. But if I don't get a good sense as to maybe it's the light, maybe you're really concerned about light. And actually that reminds me, coming back to that brief, we really try to get people clear on the top 3 criteria that are must-haves. And so if we can get clear on that in the front end, end before we go out searching, then as we search, we can also remind you as to the criteria that was most important. We all know that living in London, no matter what your budget is, it's going to mean trade-offs and concessions. It doesn't mean you won't be happy with what we end up with, but we need to be realistic. We're living in a capital city, high price per square foot, and therefore it means certain things are going to have to trade off. So at your budget, are you willing to give out perhaps, location to the tube station to get more space? If you want to say a ground floor property to get the garden, it might mean you're living on the ground floor, where some people don't like to live on the ground floor. So it's really important we can assess those trade-offs and concessions, have those conversations, but get clear on 3 criteria that are most important, such that when we go out with you, we can then be really focused on that and remind you that this property does have those 3 key critical criteria that you said were most important as we went out. So for number 7 on our list is, as we've previewed these properties, we can also, as an agent, point out key features to consider, whether that's things like double glazed windows, whether that's share of freehold versus leasehold, whether that's garden issues, damp or subsidence issues, things to consider in, say, a new build versus an existing property. We can point out those features, amenities, things to consider that will hopefully frame whether this is the right property for you or to book in a second viewing. And once we've identified the right property for you, we then can present that offer and negotiate on your behalf. Again, if we understand the current market dynamics, we'll then know, is this the opportunity, or does the market allow for properties to sell below asking price? So therefore, we're going to make sure we're going to take advantage of that on your behalf. But again, in some areas, we're finding that, well, in North London, you might be able to get properties below asking price. Perhaps in South London with a garden or, separate, houses, that's just not the case. I'm working with a buyer right now, and we're looking in Southeast London, and we're finding that the homes are selling practically the same day with multiple offers. So we definitely know that if we find the right property, we won't be probably in a position to negotiate very much. But again, my job is then to help her secure that home and make sure that when I deal with the agent, I can present her as a really strong buyer who the seller is absolutely assured is going to actually exchange and complete on the home. Number 9 on our list, once we've secured the property, we can also connect you to the key other providers you're going to need, whether that's surveyors, solicitors, moving companies, contractors, if you're going to consider doing some work. All of those third parties, we've got great relationships. I do a ton of networking, so there's usually somebody in the property sector or property related that we can certainly connect you with to make sure you're getting great service providers. And number 10 on our list is to make sure that we can advise and guide you throughout the conveyance process. And that while the solicitors are primarily the ones that are going to be doing all the legal associated with it, there might be things that come back or are raised during the conveyance or title process that we're going to want to consider. I recently represented an American couple buying in a new build, and because it's a taller building, there were issues on the cladding that we had to decide on. And so again, it's helpful to be that person that your buyers can trust and rely on to give you context as to what's coming up, why that might or might not be an issue, and how we can address it over time or in those negotiations. So I hope this list of top 10 things that an agent can do for you have made it clear how important it is to work with a buying agent. And oh, by the way, just having that extra set of eyes with you throughout the process, even if you're a couple, that third party person who can bring that clarity without being too passionate about it, my buyers have found particularly helpful. As a bonus tip, I think another great service that a buying agent should be able to do is really connect you with anyone you're going to need after you've purchased the home, whether that's the utility providers, people to measure, provide window treatments, moving or relocation companies, any of those services you're going to need to settle into your home. I recently purchased for my American buyers this flat, and we were offering as a buy to let, and we've now secured the tenant for them who wants it furnished. So again, I'm able to offer as an additional service the ability to furnish that property as a buy to let investment, to give the tenants what they're looking for and definitely keep our landlord competitive in a challenging rental market. So what did you think of the list of top 10 services that a good buying agent is able to provide to you? Let me know if you've had experiences, good or bad, with buying agents. I'd love to hear. Also, if you're thinking about buying in the property market, in the London property market, and have ever worked with a buying agent and you want more details on how we work, please do get in touch. Make sure to hit that like button and let YouTube know that I'm putting out great content, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to check out the other videos on my YouTube channel where I share great things about the London property market and living in this incredible city. So that's Arinzeh with Onyx Property Team and Keller Williams. Bye for now.